UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
නව ඩොමෙක්ස් වැල්ලම් සහ විසබීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි ඩොමෙක්ස්.
Landmark. Sri Lanka marks the first anniversary of the vaccination drive launch, while studies confirm that Omicron has pushed Delta off the radar. Hope for justice. The Justice Minister kicks off the Access to Justice program with a pledge to the northern communities.
Tamil population and the northern population had suffered enough due to 30 years of war. They have issues. Those issues had to be addressed within the local mechanism.
Plus points. Strategic expert outlines the benefits of the new EU Indo-Pacific strategy to Sri Lanka.
We have been maintaining Sri Lanka as a hub of all sorts. This is pretty much helped by the new EU strategy.
Lost in vain. A Sri Lankan father kills his children before taking his own life in Australia, while 4 perish at Garandiella while bathing. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Saturday the 29th of January 2022.
පියක් දක්වා ඉසොරි නැති 100% සුසිනිඳු කෙස් කලමක් ලබා දේ. Dove Anti-Dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9, I'm Dhammike Kanayaka. Sri Lanka began its vaccine rollout on the 29th of January in 2021, and today the country marks the first anniversary of its vaccination program. Despite the hardships the country faced in procuring the vaccines at the inception, Sri Lanka has been able to inoculate 64% of its total population with the 2-dose regime and over 73% of its total population with at least one jab against COVID.
Sri Lanka got its vaccination drive underway on the 29th of January in 2021. At that time, the plan was to use the India-produced AstraZeneca jab. India even gave the island a sizable donation in vaccine doses. But disaster struck as India's COVID situation spiraled out of control. Its health system was brought to a breaking point, which meant all the vaccines manufactured in India had to be used on the Indian population. The jab manufacturing factory there also catching fire, and the United States suspending the export of raw material needed for vaccine manufacture compounded the woes. But undeterred, the government went about procuring jabs, and China was the source. 23,029,353 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine made up the lion's share of the jabs used in the island and its vaccination success story. As of last evening, 16,624,775 people in the island have obtained at least a single dose of a vaccine against COVID. 13,911,179 people, meanwhile, have completed the 2-dose regime. Without stopping there, the government also rolled out the booster dose, even before some of the more developed countries could do so. 5,097,305 booster doses had been administered by last evening. In the meantime, the national celebration of the 1-year vaccination drive anniversary was worked off at the Ministry of Health this morning under the patronage of Subject Minister Keliya Rambukwella.
මට මතකයි මේ ආරම්භ කරපු අවස්ථාවේදී පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ පළවෙනි පැය මහා අඳෝනාවක් වුණා. ඒ අඳෝනාවෙන් කියවුනේ කිසිම දවසක මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල සාර්ථක වෙන්නේ නැහැයි කියලා. ඒ කනගාටුවෙන් මම මේක සඳහන් කරන්නේ සතුටින් නෙමෙයි. කොවිඩ් එන්නත් කරන්නේ මුළුමනින්ම අසාර්ථකයි. ඒත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේම කියපු කතාවක් මම නම් කියන්නේ. දැන් මේ කියමන් වලින් අපේ පුරවැසියා පමණක් නෙමෙයි සෞඛ්‍ය ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ ඉන්න සියලු දෙනාම යම්කිසි මට්ටමක කඩාවැටීමක් වෙන්නේ නැද්ද? හැබැයි ඒ කඩාවැටීම නතර කරන්නට පුළුවන් උනේ මේ පැහැදිලිව මම කියන්නට ඕනේ අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා ලබාගත් ආත්ම විශ්වාසය තුල ගොඩනැගිච්ච සියලුම සෞඛ්‍ය ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ නිලධාරී ඒ ගත්ත වගකීම් ඒ අභියෝගය ජය ගන්නට පුළුවන් කියන තැන ඉඳන් කතා කරපු එක ඒ වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී සිටීමම සාර්ථකත්වයට මුල්ුණයි කිව්වොත් ඒ අතිශෝක්තියක් නෙමෙයි කියන එකයි මගේ විශ්වාසය. ලැබිය යුතු අයගෙන් එහෙම නැත්නම් ලබා ගන්නට තියෙන අයගෙන් 100% පමණ පළවෙනි එන්නත් ලබා ගන්න තියෙනවා. දෙවැනි සම්පූර්ණ පුරවැසියන්ගෙන් ලබා ගත යුතු 94%කට ඊයේ වෙනකොට 12 සිට 15 දක්වා දරුවන්ගෙන් 92%ක් ලබාගෙන තියෙනවත් ඒකත් අපි සතුටින් ප්‍රකාශ කරන්නට ඕනේ. මේ සම්බන්ධව සියලු දෙනාට පින් කියලා කියන තමයි මට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ.
In the meantime, the Allergy, Immunology and Cell Biology Unit at the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura published their latest genetic sequencing report today, reaffirming once again that the Omicron variant is becoming the dominant variant in Sri Lanka. The latest study saw the sequencing of 88 COVID samples obtained from various parts of Sri Lanka, confirmed 82 of them to be Omicron positive. The remaining 6 samples had tested positive for the Delta variant. The Omicron infections confirmed among samples contain its sublineages BA1 and BA2. Both BA1 and BA2 sublineages were detected within the Colombo Municipal Council area and Greater Colombo. Further, BA1 was also found from the National Institute of Mental Health in Angoda, Casbeva and Matugama. With this being the case, health experts urge people to start getting the booster, as the country could undergo a fate similar to that of the Delta outbreak.
We saw in April with the previous variant Delta wave how things evolved, and when the threshold of about 1,000 reached and how the numbers increased exponentially after that. So it's time for us to now take all precautions. Those who haven't got their third booster dose, please ensure that you get your third booster dose and be ready if next wave happens to come your way. Don't be misled by misinformation.
In the meantime, there are also warnings of COVID patients developing diabetes in the post-COVID stage. A study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States revealed recently that there was a higher chance for children under the age of 18 being diagnosed with diabetes after 30 days of COVID infection. Now, post-COVID diabetes warnings are given in Sri Lanka as well.
We are noticing among the people who have recovered from the COVID-19 infection, there is increasing trend of new diabetes which is being noted, and there is a lot of data coming in worldwide now with the phenomenon of post-COVID diabetes. So I would advise even young people, anybody who were infected with the COVID-19 virus, to check their fasting blood sugar levels in 6 months and maybe even a year's time to make sure that they are not getting the diabetes which is termed as post-COVID diabetes.
In the meantime, the World Health Organization's country representative for Sri Lanka, Dr. Alaka Singh, praises the island for showing great resistance to withstand a lengthy quarantine curfew put in place to curb the virus spread. Delivering a message to mark the one-year anniversary of the vaccination drive in the island, Dr. Singh also called on all persons to get the booster dose.
Third wave of the pandemic that began in April tested Sri Lanka's exemplary health system and outcomes as never before. The country showed remarkable resistance in withstanding a 41-day quarantine curfew to control the COVID surge, both cases and deaths. But before we could come out of the Delta wave, Omicron within weeks became the dominant variant. Such a rapid increase in cases has not been seen before, even with Delta. Omicron underscores the crucial importance of public health and social measures to counter transmission. There is further evidence that older adults and those with comorbidities continue to be at risk. And studies also show that the third vaccination dose significantly increases protection against severe disease and illness. Sri Lanka initiated the administration of the third dose very early on and has already vaccinated 4 million, including over half of the population over 60 years of age. The fight isn't over yet. COVID-19 has had a fundamental and long-term impact on global health as well as the global economy. We must continue to do it all and do it better. Together, we can change the course of 2022.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was full of praise for the Sri Lanka Air Force for its role in ending the decades-long conflict with the terror outfit LTTE as he addressed the commissioning ceremony of the Air Force today. He told those passing out that their development is absolutely key to the national security.
The passing out parade of Air Force commissioned officers was held at the Sri Lanka Air Force Base in Katunaika today under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. A total of 153 cadets who completed their training under 6 separate courses over the last 4.5 years passed out and received their commissions from the President. This is the highest number of officers to pass out in a single batch in the history of the Sri Lankan Air Force. The President also pinned wings on 22 Air Force flight officer cadets and 6 female flight officers as well. A total of 14 officer cadets who displayed excellence in all their courses also received awards from the President. During his address, the President recalled the contributions of the Sri Lanka Air Force in bringing to an end a war that had been declared unwinnable.
The Sri Lanka Air Force has grown into a distinguished, professional and highly accomplished branch of our military. It played a key role throughout the war against terrorism that ended in 2009. At certain times during the conflict, the Jaffna Peninsula was maintained largely because of efforts by the Air Force to safely convey soldiers and supplies. It even provided ground forces needed to securely hold territory at times during the height of the conflict. Precision strikes carried out on identified targets by its skillful pilots, including on LTT supply ships far out at sea, greatly weakened terrorist forces. During the conflict, 443 Air Force personnel made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of their motherland. You must therefore take every opportunity to keep engaging in continuous professional development. This is important both in context of threats that could jeopardize national security from time to time and for the important task of nation building.
The European Union's new Indo-Pacific strategy is a plus point for Sri Lanka's aspirations to become a regional hub, says the head of the Department of Strategic Studies at the Sir John Kothawala Defence University, Dr. Harinda Vidanage. Speaking at a seminar on the new EU strategy, Dr. Vidanage added that it would give the island much more geopolitical manoeuvrability and offer expanded security cooperation as well.
Speaking at a seminar on the European Union's new Indo-Pacific strategy at the Lakshman Kadaragama Institute on Thursday, head of the Department of Strategic Studies at the Sir John Kothawala Defence University, Dr. Harinda Vidanage, touched on the positives that the new strategy brings to Sri Lanka. Dr. Vidanage explained that the EU strategy gives Sri Lanka the much-needed geopolitical manoeuvrability that it needs to assist in its hub status aspirations.
But I also want to outline the significance of the EU strategy. It actually helps small powers like Sri Lanka to break that rigidity. One of the major assets of a strategic autonomy of a small power is its maneuverability. The more we can maneuver, the more we can influence at least outcomes in certain ways. We are comfortable with that. But the current condition we are facing is of absolute rigidity. Well, I think that's a reality that we are facing day in and day out. So it is a positive thing in that context. Number two, it actually kind of helps Sri Lanka, which has always had in the recent past the hub inspiration. We have been identifying ourselves in most government manifestos, election manifestos, government policies, the idea of locating and maintaining Sri Lanka as a hub of all sorts. This is pretty much helped by the new EU strategy. Because the EU strategy entails in detail areas that cooperation is vital and it is willing to engage, which will help Sri Lanka to regain and in a way reimagine the hub that we always wanted to be.
Speaking further, Dr. Vidanage stated that with Sri Lanka being a small player in a large regional power game, the island could benefit from the expanded security cooperation that the EU strategy promises.
Another significant point is that it helps us to expand the security discourse in this country. When you're a small power trapped certainly in a big power rivalrous region, your narrative of security also becomes very much narrow. But I think the EU has brought back to a certain extent the values, the norms, what the EU always represents, and that is the broadening and deepening of the security discourse. So this is significantly entailed in this strategy. I think that's also a plus point from a perspective of a small power. And that will help Sri Lanka to kind of experience the expansion and enhanced security cooperation that it really needs. We are living in, as I said, a seriously weaponizing region, and serious money has been spent. All the countries around us, India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Singapore, you name it, is putting billions of dollars into modernization of militaries and modernization of security capability. One of the major challenges Sri Lanka is facing, we have a great professionalized armed services security sector. but we are lagging the modernization aspect of our assets. We are very much still based on legacy system. So we still talk about maritime security, we talk about air domain superiority, but that we can't match with the legacy systems that are in place. So we really need that help, especially in the areas of things like cyber security and space security, which are areas that we really need. When I talk about cyber, it's not just the tech, it's also the political warfare, the hybrid aspect which the EU strategy entails. So we really need support in that aspect as well.
We will see you shortly. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Speaking at the launch of the new awareness program on the country's legal system in Jaffna today, Justice Minister Ali Sabri said that the program is part of the government's efforts to address issues close to home for northern and eastern communities through domestic measures. Also speaking at the event, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires announced the reaching of 100 million rupees in reparation payments to victims of the conflict.
Speaking at the launch of the Access to the Justice program by the Ministry of Justice in Jaffna today, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires outlined the progress made by key institutions in the government's push for the homegrown reconciliation process.
Then the Office of Reparations is today rendering magnificent service throughout this country. Today there were 20 reparation certificates that were distributed. But the actual number is not 20. It is 1,000. During the last 4.5 days, 100 million rupees has been distributed as reparations. 1,000 checks have been paid out. Then also distributed were appointments for sudden death inquirers. So these are all matters that need to be resolved close to the people. You don't want to ask people to go all the way from Jaffna to Colombo. We are determined to ensure that the Sustainable Development Goals program, which is a program formulated and refined by the United Nations system. Now here again, we are very eager to go to all parts of the country and to find out what the priorities of the people are. And those will vary not only from province to province, but even from district to district. So we must have a proper understanding of what the people really want, and we must respond to those actual requirements without making decisions from Colombo. The Honorable Ali Sabri mentioned the work that is being done here in Jaffna, in the Northern Province, by the Office of Missing Persons and the Office for National Unity and Reconciliation. I would also add that Mr. Justice Nawaz, who is chairing the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, has also come to Jaffna. He has held a large number of interviews here. I think more than 55 people have testified before him, and that reflects the success of this program. I entirely agree with his observation that cultural diversity is a source of richness. It is not a weakness. It is not something that holds us back. We are proud of our different cultures. And the coming together of these cultures, the intermingling of these cultures, is a true reflection of the national spirit of Sri Lanka.
In the meantime, Justice Minister Ali Sabri touched on the launch of the ministry's awareness program that he said was aimed at bringing legal solutions for the issues of the northern populace at the domestic level.
We do understand Tamil language and their culture is very important for the people of this region and people of Jaffna and the northern province. Similarly, we all understand the religion is very important and sensitive to the Muslims. Similarly, we understand the country and Buddhism is very important for the Buddhists. So this diversity is not a drawback. This is in fact a blessing. I was so happy to see some of the representation of the rich diversity of the Tamil culture in this area. It was performed in this stage today, which was not possible 12, 15 years ago. Now it is all possible. Their talents are coming out. We must enhance that. We must support that. We must get the best out of it. There are 17 institutions which comes under the Justice Ministry had decided to go on an awareness program in the various parts of the country in order to make awareness to the public what kind of services are available to them, how they should approach and how to get their services done. We will do it in all over the country, but we decided to choose Jaffna and the northern province at the first instance and the first interval because we understand Tamil population and the northern population had suffered enough due to 30 years of war. they have issues. Those issues have to be addressed within the local mechanism.
Australian police have confirmed that a Sri Lankan man has killed his 2 children and taken his own life in Perth. The circumstances which led to the incident are under investigation, and the police are considering the incident as a double murder-suicide.
A Sri Lankan man is alleged to have taken the lives of his 2 children before taking his own in Perth, Australia. Australian media say that the man, identified as Indika Gunathilaka, killed his 4-year-old daughter and 6-year-old son before ending his own life in the garage of a home on Essington Street in the southeast suburb of Huntingdale. Authorities had discovered the bodies when they were alerted by the children's mother after the trio failed to meet at a predetermined location. Assistant Commissioner for the Metropolitan Region told media that the initial investigations led police to believe that there was no other person involved in the deaths. He was quoted saying that it'll take some time to investigate the exact cause of death and the circumstances, that the police are treating the incident as a double murder-suicide. He had added that the early assessment is that the incident is a domestic homicide-suicide, and investigations will determine whether there are some other issues at play. Local media said that 2 days before the incident, Gunathilaka shared a picture on Facebook of them holding hands on a beach watching the sunset. Further, Gunathilaka had posted a 17-minute video on Facebook before Christmas, in which he had allegedly confirmed he suffered from depression and was prescribed medication and had been seeing a psychologist. According to reports, he spoke of a deep, dark hole people struggling could find themselves in.
In the meantime, 4 persons died today while bathing at the Garandiella in Badulla. 1 person, meanwhile, is also missing. 11 persons had gone to bathe at the Garandiella in Atampitiya. Residents of the Atampitiya estate, 5 of them had gone missing while bathing at the lower section of Garandiella. A joint search operation launched by the police and the locals led to the recovery of 1 body. Later, 3 more were found. Operations are underway in search of the remaining missing person. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the ambassador of Netherlands is of the view that Sri Lanka is in a unique position to become the preferred choice of the Dutch and European markets. Her remarks came during a discussion that was worked off earlier this week between the Netherlands and Sri Lanka. Also speaking during the discussion, a representative of the Board of Investment pointed out that some of the benefits investors will have in choosing to invest in the island, by emphasising that the country has the lowest corporate tax, or corporate income tax that is, at 24% in the region.
An online discussion was held earlier this week between investment stakeholders in Sri Lanka and the Netherlands. The topic of the discussion was creating new connections and supporting sustainable trade and investment between the Netherlands and Sri Lanka. Netherlands is currently Sri Lanka's 5th largest exporter and stands as the 6th largest export market for the country. Total exports from Sri Lanka to the Netherlands during 2021 has risen by 46% to $425.72 million.
We see a major scope for Dutch FDIs and joint ventures in agriculture industry, water management, renewable energy, especially wind and solar, IT, apparel, pharmaceuticals, as well as services such as hospitality, tourism, and marine sector. The pandemic has also further accelerated uptake of e-commerce and digital services. In parallel, I wish to inform that Dutch companies could also use Sri Lanka as a manufacturing base to access the market to India and Pakistan through Sri Lanka's FTAs. Looking at Sri Lanka's main export products to Netherlands, we see a considerable potential for further export products such as apparel, especially laundry, cinnamon, coconut-based products, black tea, cut flowers, surgical gloves, and bicycles. We also see an upward trend in non-traditional products to the Dutch market. However, it is a fact that the full potential has not been utilized, both in TIGs as well as investments. For instance, there are a large number of items provided in the EU GSP Plus provisions which remain unutilized. It is also recommended that in the future, our export basket should have a sustainable initiative to contribute towards a circular economy.
Also speaking during the discussion, the ambassador of Netherlands to Sri Lanka pointed out the potential Sri Lanka could explore in the European market.
In the Netherlands and the EU, we are also working on laws and regulation in this area in order to stop products coming into the EU that, for instance, are made by children or cause deforestation. And I'm convinced that actually Sri Lanka has a unique position here in this regard. Sri Lanka is already a front runner in the region and could become the preferred sustainable choice for Dutch and European buyers. And the Dutch government wants to support Dutch and Sri Lankan companies to run even faster. We want to ensure that Dutch companies engage in responsible business conduct abroad by making this easier. And we want to support local companies with expertise to produce responsibly, as they have to adjust themselves to the upcoming demand and mandatory requirements.
In the meantime, the Board of Investment in Sri Lanka highlighted a range of benefits that investors could have by investing in Sri Lanka.
If you take the corporate income tax rate that's applicable here in Sri Lanka, it's relatively favorable. We're at about 24% versus a regional standard of around 30%. But we've gone one step further. We give a further 10% rebate. So 14% applies to preferential industries. Apart from this, we've identified certain other sectors. Take ICT, for example, or even the cultivation piece of agriculture, which are zero CIT. So there's no corporate income tax. In certain other industries, we're giving as much as 7-year tax holidays. What we look at in terms of Sri Lanka as an investment destination, we understand that incentive piece is more or less matched across the board in many other countries that are fighting for the same pool of FDI. So the key selling points of Sri Lanka have always been, and without doubt, the talent and innovation sector. And that's one of the biggest incentives for anybody moving into Sri Lanka, is to leverage on what we call value for money talent. So we're talking about very top-end talent at relatively competitive price point, which applies to a lot of the major costs of production. So be it energy, be it a number of other factor costs of production, Sri Lanka remains very competitive, especially in this region. And of course, Sri Lanka is what we call a prime piece of real estate in this part of the world. And with that come a lot of other competencies in terms of the logistics side, which I would say in today's context, especially with the cost of freight skyrocketing, a key advantage. So it's a mix of each of these. So we have the fiscal side and we have a lot of other compelling factors, which put together, we believe, provide a very attractive package.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.